Well, good morning, everyone. Miss Angie, I see our interpreters are there. Good morning, Miss Natalie. Welcome to our first 2024 State Advisory Panel for Exceptional Children. Happy New Year, everyone. Really excited to see you guys virtually in this space. Thank you, Misty, for being adaptive to move this to a virtual context because of the inclement weather outside. Again, I think Jared's going to.
This is Jared Sloan. Dr. East, you're muted.
I did not do that. I do not know how that happened. Did y'all get my welcome? Good morning again. Welcome to our first SAPEC meeting, the State Advisory Panel for Exceptional Children. Happy New Year. I hope everyone is safe in their respective virtual capacities. Thank you, Misty, for changing this at short notice due to the inclement weather. So it looks like we have about 23 folks online, but I wanted to reiterate our meeting purpose for the advisory board. So the Individuals with Disabilities Act, IDEA, requires that the state establish advisory panels to advise and assist the Kentucky Department of Education, KDE, on special education and related services for children with disabilities. The SAPEC members represent respective areas, including individuals with disabilities, parents of children with disabilities, individuals with disabilities, service providers, and administrators. So with that, it's a meeting of the minds, and we need all of you all, and we appreciate the time commitment that you allow to serve on this particular committee. If everyone could review, now I turn it over to if everyone could review the agenda this morning, because we need a motion to approve this morning's agenda.
I make a motion that we approve the agenda.
I do need to add something to the agenda. I need to add indicator 4, some proposed changes as action item number 11.
Dr. East, this is Jared Sloan. If I may, we need a roll call of attendees for the meeting.
So my roll call is 2 down. I can go back and do a roll call.
Yeah.
You're right. We just need to move that up. I do have that down there.
I'll take partial responsibility for that, Dr. East.
I knew it was there, but that's okay. It's all good. Let's do a roll call this morning. We're going to get it together. It's the new year, Jared. I will call your name. If you could please answer present or here, so for attendance purposes. Ashley Barlow. David Bradley.
Here.
Tracy Brewer. Lashina Carruthers.
Here.
Tiffany Clark.
Here.
Jeffrey Coles,
Here.
Amy Beth Crump, Tal Curry,
Here.
Tanika East, present. Zachary Stumbo,
Present.
Emily Fox,
Here.
Tammy Giles, Jason Jones, Brittany Kleiner, April Miller, Michelle Morgan,
Present.
Chadwick Knoll, Tyler Reed, Cassie Jo Robinson, Jenny Ward, and ex officio Greta Hilton. A quorum has been established. Thank you, Jared. We are a team. Now back to the agenda. Can you guys please review the agenda for today? And again, I need to add indicator 4 for Roman numeral 11 as the proposed change.
Dr. East, I'll amend my motion to include the changes you requested.
Thank you, sir. Can I get a second?
Second.
Who's the first second? Can you say your name for minute purposes?
It's Jeff Coles.
Second by Jeff Coles. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the proposed change to add indicator 4 for the proposed changes to Roman numeral 11, please vote by saying aye.
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 Any nays? No. Any abstentions? The ayes have it. It's been moved and properly seconded that we add that to the agenda. Thank you so much. I will now turn it over to Misty Green for the review of minutes and meeting norms and duties.
Okay. All right, the review of the meeting norms. Interpreters are provided at each SAPEC meeting. Members must speak when called on for roll call or any voting. When speaking, please state your name each time so that the American Sign Language, ASL, interpreters can communicate who is speaking to those using interpretive services. Reminder, stay focused on the topic agenda at hand for the sake of time, be that in regular business or committee meetings. The recording secretary is taking notes for the meeting until the election of the new secretary is voted on during the meeting. Meeting materials are located in email and posted in the SAPEC meeting Google folder. Additional feedback from members is provided through the meeting exit slip. Please have your camera on and mute your microphone when not speaking. Okay, we are transitioning to a different type of online meeting. Chat is not available today for today's meeting. If online, please click the raised hand icon and wait to be recognized. Okay. All right. The meeting norms and duties. All right. Advise the SEA of unmet needs within the state in the education of children with disabilities. Comment publicly on any rules or regulations proposed by the state regarding education of children with disabilities. Advise the SEA in developing evaluations and reporting on data to the Secretary under Section 618 of the Act. Advise the SEA in developing corrective action plans to address findings identified in federal monitoring reports under Part B of the Act, and advise the SEA in developing and implementing policies relating to the coordination of services for children with disabilities.
Thank you so much for reiterating the duties of today's meeting and those meeting norms. And again, we are in a virtual capacity, so it'll be a little different, but your cameras must remain on. And if you are not speaking at that time, please make sure your mics are muted. But thank you in advance. Next, we'll turn it over to Emily. You have your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to let you know that there's a notification at the top that says only some participants can share video. So I haven't been given the right, I guess, to share video. Normally, that's not a problem for me in these meetings. So I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you, Emily. We'll get Jared on that behind the scenes so you can cut your video on.
I know all you all want to see me on this snowy morning as I sip my coffee.
Sure thing, sure thing. Thank you for letting us know. Now we'll turn it over to Melody Cooper for our membership update. Good morning, Miss Melody.
Good morning, Dr. East and SAPEC members. It's good to see you from home this morning. So yes, membership update. We have, it looks like, Misty went over the roles, the expectations for the advisory panel. So that was great. It looks like, according to my count, we have 12 vacancies still. That was increased by one when Secretary Danny Slayton had to resign. And we also have 8 current members who will expire, whose terms will expire on June 30th of this year. So that's something that I'm sure Misty will be in contact as time draws a little bit closer, probably in April, so that we can get a count of who is still interested in continuing and who might be needing to step down at that time. So the governor's office, there is good news and bad news on the membership and the vacancies. The governor's office is aware and on top of the fact that there are several vacancies and with the different advisory councils that they make appointments for, because as we remember, any member of this panel must be appointed by the governor. But so they are aware, but they have notified us through our director of government relations not to expect any new appointments while the session of the General Assembly is active. And so that did begin on January 2nd and will not end until April 15th. So we won't see any action on new appointments until after the session would be over. I think that April will be a good time for us to touch base with them about that. And I believe, if I'm correct, Misty, that our next, and Dr. East, that our next SAPEC meeting is scheduled for sometime in April. Is that correct?
Yes, this is Misty. April 18th will be our next meeting.
Okay. Oh, and my apologies. I forgot to identify myself up front. I'm Melody Cooper, and I'm the policy advisor here in the Office of Special Education and Early Learning. So my apologies for that. So I think that one thing that we might discuss when the time draws closer in April is one thing I'm working with our Director of Government Relations on is if there's a way that as a panel you would be able to kind of advertise that process, advertise the vacancies and how people are able to apply through the governor's office. So I'm working with him on that. His name is Brian Perry, and hopefully I'll have an update in April about that process so that when new appointments are ready to be made, we can get the word out that the panel would be able to get the word out on that. And so I think that's all I have on membership updates, Dr. East.
I do have one quick question. So if the appointments expire in June and the session doesn't end until April, is there a deadline for us to solicit?
That would be something that I would need to work on with our Director of Government Relations. He's the liaison with the governor's office on that. And so we wouldn't solicit, we would not solicit members, but what we could do is just advertise that there are vacancies and make people aware of the application process. So, yeah, that would be, I do not know if there would be a deadline for that, but that's something that I'm working on with him.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Are there any more questions from the floor for Melody regarding membership updates? Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Melody, for that. Next, if we could take about 4 minutes to review the minutes, and then I'll ask and entertain a motion to approve the minutes from October 19th. Those were sent via email, but if there are any corrections at this time, please, until 9:25, please review those minutes. Misty, I noticed the footer on the minutes needs to be corrected to reflect October 19th, 2023.
Okay, this is Misty. I'll take care of that.
Thank you so much. Okay, are there any other corrections to the October? meeting. I see a hand, Emily.
Yes, I think, just real quick, double check me on this, but there's a quote from Ashley Barlow on page 4. It's a direct quote, but it says students are acting too quickly to remove students. I'm going to guess she probably said schools are acting too quickly to remove students, but we might want to check on that.
I'm on page 4. Tell me, where are you? At the top? Got it. Thank you for that. Schools are acting too quickly to remove students. I see it. Thank you for that correction. Are there any other corrections to October minutes? Hearing none, can I entertain a motion to approve the October minutes with the noted corrections?
I'll make that motion, Dr. East. David Bradley.
Thank you, David. Is there a second?
Jeff Cole, second.
Thank you, Jeff. Is there any discussion? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Like sign of nay? Any abstentions? It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve the October minutes with the noted corrections. Right now is our public comment. And I am excited because we do have a public comment. It's been a while since we've heard from the public. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Misty to share that public comment.
This is Misty. Dr. East, there's not been a public comment. I checked this morning. Sorry.
Just when I thought I was going to get lucky for the new year, I thought somebody had something to say. I tried. Do we have any guests at this time for public comment? Well, we will pause for 2 minutes in case we have any persons joining us with a public comment. We'll reconvene at 9:30. Okay, we'll move on with our next agenda item, which is the election of the vice chair. We do have 2 vacancies on the panel. And the first is the vice chair position. I want to reiterate the roles of the vice chair, as some of you may be aware that Brian was the chairperson who accepted another position and could no longer hold in this capacity. So I stepped up in July as the chairwoman. So that left a vacancy in the vice chair role. So I need someone to hear my humble cry. I'll explain the duties of the vice chair, and if you feel so compelled, I will then open the floor for nominations. So the duties of the vice chair. preside at and maintain order at the SAPEC meetings in the absence of the chair, assist the chair in preparing the annual report, assist the chair in ensuring the accuracy of meeting minutes. And that's also serving on the leadership capacity when we meet with KDE in preparing for the meetings as well. So I now need a motion or nominations, I'm sorry, for someone in the vice chair role. Speak now. Can I get any nominations from the floor?
Dr. East, I'm happy to serve in that capacity if someone wishes to nominate me.
Look at that. I'll take a self-nomination. Emily,
I will gladly nominate David Bradley just because he was quicker than I was. Thank you, David.
That's what I'm talking about. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Currently, I have David Bradley. Can I get a motion to close nominations? Hurry, fast.
I motion to close nominations.
Thanks, Zach. So we have David Bradley as nominated and self-nominated by Emily Fox for the vice chair position. We are going to go unopposed. So David Bradley, welcome as the vice chair of SAPEC. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we need a secretary. As you guys can see, that the minutes are very detailed. There is a process to how the minutes are done. I've helped Danny in various different settings in his absence to record those minutes, but it's very detailed. And when you're scribing those minutes, they are approved by KDE and then submitted. Sometimes it takes a couple of revisions, but anyone should be able to pick up our minutes to know what happened in the meetings. And Misty is operating as the recording secretary in the absence of this capacity right now, but she will not be in this role all the time. So we need a secretary. The duties for secretary include preside at and maintain order at the SAPEC meetings in the absence of the chair and vice chair, provide assistance to the staff from OCL in the preparation of minutes and other correspondence regarding matters as designated by the chair, send acknowledgement communications within 30 days to all persons who wish to address the panel in the public forum. Those are the duties. And there is a template as well for the secretary, but we need someone in that capacity really bad so we can function as a leadership team and kind of still take our duties and responsibilities and move the charge forward. So at this time, Can I have a motion to open the floor for nominations for secretary? Or can I take nominations? I don't need a motion. Sorry, nominations for secretary. Let me turn my camera so I can see some faces. Do I have anybody that will take it for like until the next term? Do I have anybody that can take it for today? so, so Misty won't be in dual capacity. Jared, you've been recognized on the floor.
This is Jared Sloan. Just so that everyone knows, we're actually using something new with transcription through Teams. So that will make this process that much easier. There will be a transcript that you will be able to download, that actually I'll be able to download, and that will help do the minutes. So if that entices anyone to take on that role, it will be a lot easier going forward on being the secretary for the group.
Thank you, Jared. Yes, it should entice someone.
So what you're telling me is there's a template and there's a transcript. Okay, I can handle that.
Emily, would you like me to nominate you for secretary?
Here's to you, David. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey,
I
we are a
nominate Emily
team.
Fox as secretary.
We're a team. We're a team. I hear Emily Fox is being nominated by David Bradley for the role of the secretary. Can I get a motion to close nominations?
Tiffany Clark, I'll make a motion to close nominations. Let's close
Thank
that real
you.
fast.
That's right. That's right. It's been closed and we don't, we're gonna run Emily approval as running as unopposed. So congratulations, Emily, as the new recording secretary.
Just
We're
remember,
actually-
y'all promised the template and the transcript.
We do. We got you. We got you. This is our new leadership team. We are going to pause for a second so that we can actually do a quick transition. Right, Misty?
Excuse me. Yes, this is Misty. We can take a break, if you will, Dr. East, and I can chat with, I can send Miss Emily the template.
Sounds good. We will take, since we are on schedule, let's take a 10-minute break and I will see you guys at 9:50. And we'll pause to transition Misty and Emily with that role, and then we'll reconvene at 9:50. Can I get a motion to pause the meeting until 9:50? Recess.
So moved, Jeff.
I'll
All those
second.
in favor? Thank you,
David
David Bradley. We'll reconvene at 9:50. Thank you. Okay, Secretary Emily, are you ready? We'll call this meeting back to order at 9:50. Now we will have a legislative update from Melody Cooper.
All right, good morning again. This is Melody Cooper. And thank you, Jared. I see the slides pulled up there, so we'll just jump right into it. Okay, so as I mentioned, the 2024 regular session began on January 2nd. It's been a little bit of a slow start to the session with, what I see to be, maybe not as many bills being filed just yet, or not bills not being assigned to committee. The committee work's been a little bit slow to start up, but that looks to be ramping up. Several bills that we were watching as an agency were assigned to committee yesterday. So I think the action is about to ramp up. And so again, for any bills that are introduced, we do have a deadline for introducing new bills. And so in the House, that deadline is February 26th, and in the Senate, it's February 28th. And so when a bill is introduced, just as a quick reminder, for when I say that there's action happening with a bill, that means that for anything to happen, for a bill to become a law, it has to be assigned to a relevant committee and heard in the committee, and then passed out of that committee back to the chamber that originated the bill, either the House or the Senate. If it makes it through the chamber, then it has to go to the other chamber where it would go through that same process of going to a committee, being heard in a committee, passing out of the committee. Any bills that pass out of both chambers, the Senate and the House, would then go to the governor, where he could sign them into law. He could veto, or he could let them be enacted without his signature, just let it go without his signature. And of course, in Kentucky currently, there is a majority, so that any vetoes could be overridden by a majority vote in both chambers. So let's see. I showed you that. So yes, the final 2 days then, this is the longer session. Every other year we have a longer session for the budget bill to be discussed. And so it ends on April 15th, and that veto recess will run from March 29th through April 9th. And then I think I've linked the regular session calendar there that you can see. Trying to remember if there was something else. No, that was all for that. So as I mentioned, there are committees going on. They have not been meeting much just yet, but they are starting to ramp up now. So the two that we really keep an eye on for sure, and if you're interested in looking, would be the education committees and the appropriations and revenue committees in each chamber. Those are really interesting. And of course, there are others that we watch as well, like the state and local government and that kind of thing. They're all streamed live via the KET feed or LRC's YouTube site. And they also keep those archived as well. So if you can't watch live, you can go back and watch them on archive. And I'm not sure if the YouTube channel has it, but I know on KET, you can even watch what's going on in the chambers live and archived. They'll show what's happening on the House and Senate floor. So that can be interesting to watch those discussions sometimes. The committee schedules are found there at that link. It's on the LRC website. So again, I mentioned that this year is a budget year. The governor's proposed budget was House Bill 114, and I'm sure that anybody who's listened to the news, heard a lot about that. And so finally, just on Tuesday, it had been a while, and we had been expecting to see the House propose their version of the budget. And so they did on Tuesday evening. House Bill 6 is the House version. And it is, I'll talk a little bit more about that later when I get to our legislative priorities, but there were a couple of commonalities with the governor's proposed budget, and then a lot of differences as well, as you would expect. Now, the budget bill is the only bill in which the governor can do line item vetoes once that comes to his desk. But again, it can be overridden with a simple majority vote in each chamber. And the new budget would go into effect on July 1st of 2024. Okay, next slide. So I've got, I've got a couple of bills or a few bills there that I've listed that are just bills of interest that we've been watching as an agency. And then a couple that I added in that I thought would be of interest to us specifically. There are, less Senate bills than there are House bills because there are less members of the Senate than there are the House. But Senate Bill 8 is one. And right now, I should mention that any of those that have the little asterisk next to them are the bills that have actually been assigned to a committee. And so as a reminder, that means it's kind of taking action. The committee, it's been assigned. Now the committee may not necessarily hear it. They don't have to hear it, but they have all been assigned as of today. So Senate Bill 8 would change the Kentucky Board of Education membership to be elected instead of appointed. And so if you'll remember last year, we had a little change in the way that the Commissioner of Education is appointed. They're still hired by the KBE, but then confirmed by the Senate to align with the rest of state government. And so now it's just a few more changes they're looking to make. If this were to pass, I believe Kentucky would be one of like a dozen states that elects their boards of education, state boards of education. Senate Bill 11 is one that requires notice to schools prior to filing a public offense petition against a child in certain cases. This one, I don't know a lot about it, but it looks like it's one where court designated workers would need to make those notifications if a county attorney were going to bring charges against a minor, where if that minor were an adult, it could be either a felony or a misdemeanor that was about certain things like, drugs, weapons, bodily injury, that kind of thing, violent offender. Senate Bill 18 makes a few changes to school bus specifications, loosening up some of those requirements for districts that would align more with the other states around us. Senate Bill 38 proposes, there are actually several of these bills, so I'm not sure if this is the one they'll really get moving or not, or if any of them will, but proposes providing free feminine hygiene products for elementary and secondary students. Senate Bill 52, there's been a lot of discussion about artificial intelligence. Again, this one's not the only bill out there, but it has been assigned to committee, and they're just really looking to see how artificial intelligence, what's coming, what we know, how that could impact the way our government functions, including how it would impact education as a whole. So there are some that propose task forces to study the issue, different things like that. So this is one of a few. Senate Bill 92 is about the transportation of students, allowing districts to use, or proposing to allow districts to use passenger transportation vehicles. They would have to do that as part of a special alternative transportation plan that they would submit. So if they were to try to use that. Senate Bill 93 was one that everyone expected some things to address: diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And this particular bill mentions trauma-informed approach references and removing that language from the law currently. And so this is one that this is another one where this one may or may not be the one that really gets moving, but right now it's assigned to committee. But there are several bills that address this, and also in the post-secondary world, things about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and kind of adding some, I guess, guidelines for any implementation of initiatives that would have to do with diversity, equity, inclusion, and belongings, are really requirements about implementation. And so again, this one, any of these would likely change a lot. They will probably lead to some controversy, and so keep you updated on how that unfolds. Then there's another one that would provide, Senate Bill 95, provide reasonable accommodations to a lactating student. And then Senate Bill 98 is another one about the Kentucky Board of Education. And it is proposing that currently there is a student member who's a non-voting member of the KBE. And this bill is proposing that the student member be made a voting member. And it also, I think it adds another at-large member, and then it requires that at least 2 members of the Board of Education would have a child in school, K-12. Let me make sure I said everything I wanted to say about those. I believe so. Any questions on the Senate bills? Okay, Jared, we can proceed to the House bills then. Okay, so again, there are more House bills filed than Senate bills. So here are the House bills of interest that I've been taking a look at. House Bill 36 is about student resiliency and well-being. KDE is supportive of this one, and so we'll see. It has not been assigned to committee yet, but we'll see what happens with that. House Bill 41 is one of several immunization bills. They all are a little bit different. This one seems to the focus of it seems to replace restrictions on like incentivizing or requiring vaccines of certain types of vaccines. Not, it's not, kids don't have to be get immunizations anymore, but it's just really focused more on any incentives that would be attached to certain immunizations. House Bill 51 is kind of a continuation of some of the parental rights bills that we saw last year in the 2023 session. This one is particularly about surveys, examinations, and then RFID, the radio frequency kind of tracking devices. House Bill 96, this one has been assigned to committee now, and it proposes moments of silence and reflection at the beginning of the school day that would be, I believe, at least 1 minute and not more than 2 minutes, that they would allow that for students and staff in schools. House Bill 108, this one is proposing some changes to accountability related to English learners, where it would introduce a tiered system. It's just trying to address the impact that some districts have large populations of English learners. And so it's addressing how that impacts the accountability for those certain districts. So it introduces a tiered approach to accountability. House Bill 158 is regarding dyslexia, and it would require policies and instruction. So right now there are recommendations, but this would be changing it from suggesting it to requiring that districts have policies and instruction in teacher preparation programs regarding dyslexia. I don't know if that one would actually get moving at all, but it is out there. House Bill 162 has been assigned to committee. This is one that KDE was involved in. It's the early numeracy bill that is, I guess it's like an extension of what happened in the last session around early literacy, except it's trying to take some of those same things that we're putting in place for early literacy throughout the state and expanding that to numeracy. The bill does include different grade levels so that it wouldn't put too much burden on districts and schools to implement. House Bill 191, that's another one that's a continuation of some of the subject matter that we saw last year relating to any materials, programs, or events that are alleged to be harmful to minors. And this one in particular addresses discussing those materials during local board meetings and how that would occur. House Bill 208 is one of several constitutional amendments that's been proposed right now. So this one would be related to school funding and really being able to use public dollars to fund educational efforts that are outside of the public school domain. So like charter schools and things like that. This one, again, is one of several constitutional amendments being proposed. And on the ballot in November, you can only have 4. And so at some point, if they all kind of got traction, there would have to be decisions made about which ones they would actually put on the ballot. So that is one of them. I want to make sure I didn't skip any of these. Let's see. House Bill 214. I'm just going to read a short section, if you don't mind, from the bill that's being proposed, because it does the best job of really saying what the meat of this bill is. And so it's expanding on, or not really expanding, but adding to the protections that are already available under law for individuals with disabilities. And so it says the general purpose of this act are to safeguard all individuals within the state from discrimination because of the person's status as an individual with an intellectual or developmental disability, protect the individual's interest in personal dignity and freedom from humiliation, make available to the state the individual's full productive capacities, and further the interests, rights, and privileges of individuals with intellectual disabilities and developmental disabilities within the state. So that describes, it's not a very long bill, and it also includes some actions that a person with a disability or someone acting on their behalf could do, if they feel like those provisions are not being met. House Bill 225 that one's just an education cleanup bill. KDE has been working with the sponsor on that one, and it's kind of a red tape reduction just to make things a little bit easier and a little less expensive for districts in certain cases. House Bill 227 provides a merger process for contiguous school districts. And House Bill 245, this is one of them. There are going to be a few out there that are going to address the teacher workforce issues. And this is just the first one that's kind of been assigned a committee that I'm aware of. And it removes the expected family income from the selection criteria for that teacher scholarship that's out there. All right. Any questions on the House bills? Okay, we can move on then. Okay, there we go. Legislative priorities. So these are the department, KDE's legislative priorities that were approved by the Kentucky Board of Education. And these additional budget, the first slide here shows our additional budget requests. And so some of this, I am not going to claim to be completely schooled in the 250-page budget bill that dropped on Tuesday. I've looked at a few things, so I can update you on a couple of these things, but I do not know all of the ins and outs of it yet. So we did propose an increase to the SEEK base funding based on inflation, and it does look like there was an increase in the SEEK funding, about 4% the first year and 2% the next year. And that one aligned, I believe it aligned with the governor's proposed increases to that SEEK, to that base SEEK funding. There was an increase in some transportation. I don't know if it fully funded the transportation, but there was quite an increase that they also added in for transportation. Universal preschool has been one of our priorities for quite some time, and it does not look like that one's going to get funded this time around, but we'll keep going. Education workforce supports. Again, we're asking for several things, and that's one where I'm not aware yet of what's in there for that. So David Wickersham, I know, is on. If he has an update on that part, feel free to jump in, David, if there's something that you've got information on that I'm not aware of just yet. There's a big ask for the Kentucky Education Technology System, and then some additional supports for the Read to Succeed that had passed last year, and given some additional literacy coaches and things like that. Okay, I think I've covered all of those. We can go to the next slide. And then these were not included in ABRs. They were a different set of priorities that still came from KDE and the board. The CTE funding formula is not asking for additional funds, but they need to change the formula, trying to create more equitable access to those funds, because they did actually, I think 2 years ago, got a big increase in the funding. And this is going to codify language that will help them distribute those funds the most equitably. And I believe that, I'm not sure if they have bill numbers yet, but that I do expect to see that move forward. And then, of course, continued support for our Kentucky state schools, the Kentucky School for the Blind and the Kentucky School for the Deaf. Some advanced placement funding changes, statutory cleanup. some statutory cleanup again, and we do see that. We see some of that happening where they're trying to give us some red tape reduction there for districts. And then this is a facilities issue that would sunset a provision that's been really helpful in making facilities decisions for districts. And so without legislative action, that would go away. And so they're just trying to get that passed. And I believe that's it for me. Are there any questions or any bills that you've heard of that I might be able to look up for you and provide any information on?
Melody, this is Dr. East. Can you upload this particular slide in the shared drive, in the Google Drive? I was
Sure,
able to
yeah.
print out the other ones just so everybody could have access to it. I think it's some great information. If you could put it in this meeting's folder, that would be awesome.
I can do that, Dr. East.
Wonderful. Are there I see a raised hand from Jared.
This is Jared. It's already in the Google folder.
Okay. I must have looked too early.
That's
Yeah,
my fault. I didn't give it to
this,
Jared
this morning. So,
Oh, you put it this morning. Okay,
Yeah.
I got you.
Okay,
Are
well,
there
thank
any
you.
questions from the floor? Thank you, Melody, for that thorough update. We always appreciate you. We went through a lot of transitions, so I'm glad to see David today. Thank you for making that transition to Melody seamless for her and us as well.
Thank you, Dr. East.
Next on the agenda, we'll have Carol Ann Morrison with the due process update.
This is Carol Ann. Can you all hear me okay?
We can. Good morning.
Great. Good morning. Thank you, Dr. East. So I will start with a due process hearing update. I only have one new case to share with you since our last meeting. I believe that Misty has sent you all a copy of the full report. It's been redacted. We try to send those out to you as soon as we receive them from our Office of Legal Services. And then we also post them on our KDE webpage. It's the dispute resolution webpage. And so you can find all of the due process hearing decisions there. The one I want to share with you, talk to you about today is agency case number 232407. And Jared, I think that number's on the next slide just to give them reference. And this case really centers around a student's expulsion and what happened after that. And so according to the due process complaint that came in March of 2023, the student was overheard discussing that he had a gun in his vehicle on school property. The vehicle was searched and 2 guns were located in the vehicle on the property. The guns had been left inadvertently in the vehicle from a hunting trip over the weekend. But based on the zero tolerance policy at the school, the student was expelled after having an expulsion hearing, and that occurred March 14th of 2023. So a few months later, in May of that same year, the student's mother referred the student for special education services. The referral came in after the school had dismissed for summer break. And in this case, the hearing officer determined that the district did not have a basis of knowledge to suspect that the student might need special education services prior to the mother's referral. So basically, he was saying that during the time of the incident that led to the expulsion in March, the student was not a student identified with a disability, and the district had no reason to suspect that the student had a disability until the mom referred that student later in May. And then the student was later diagnosed with ADHD on July 10th of that same year. And the mother signed consent for special education evaluation on July 24th. The district completed an expedited evaluation and had an individual education program in place for the student by September 25th, which was 31 school days from receipt of parental consent. So they did expedite that evaluation. So there were several allegations that were made in this due process complaint and that were addressed by the hearing officer. Those include allegations that the student's expulsion was arbitrary and motivated by bad faith and shocks the conscience. The district staff failed to identify the student for special education services in violation of the law prior to expulsion. The district failed to expeditiously evaluate the student and have an IEP in place at the beginning of the school year. The district denied the student the right to assert disciplinary protections under IDEA. District refused to perform a manifestation determination. The district was interfering with the student's placement decisions regarding least restrictive environment, and school district staff had been restricted from interacting with the mother. So the hearing officer heard both sides on all of these allegations, and the hearing officer dismissed all of the allegations with prejudice. So he found in favor of the district and he dismissed all of the allegations. So none of those were found to be true by the hearing officer. Any questions on that specific case? Like I said, you have a copy, a redacted copy of the full case, and then you can find it on our website as well. Any questions on that?
Thank you so much,
You're
Ms.
welcome.
Carolyn, for that update. We always appreciate that update.
Sure.
Next, we are moving right along. We are going to, is that where we are? We're moving indicator 4 up. Yes. I don't have that right there. I had it as 11.
It's Dr. East, this is Carol Ann. It's up to you.
But I can move. You
I
can go ahead. I know you got to present on it, and we amended it, and we can just move it up because I know this is your topic. So you can
Okay.
go ahead.
Sure. Thanks. Oh, I see Jared's hand up.
Yep, Dr. East, I have that on the agenda as item number 11 after the due process update.
Okay, sounds good.
Go ahead. All right. Thank you. This is Carol Ann. Thank you all for letting me share these proposed changes with you. I'm going to share a little bit of background knowledge with you first before I share information about changes, and then I'm going to ask for your feedback on one of these changes that we'd like to make. So I appreciate you being willing to hear me and then to provide some feedback. If you've served on the panel for any amount of time, you may be familiar with our state performance plan annual performance report. We call that the SPP APR for short. And we do provide you with an update on that each year. So it may be something you're a little bit familiar with, but I wanted to just provide a little bit of background knowledge. Jared, if we go to the next slide, this just gives you some information about what is the SPP APR. And basically, under the IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the state is required to develop a state performance plan every 6 years. And then annually, we have to provide a report, an annual performance report, where we report on the progress the state is making toward the goals and targets in that plan. And so we submit the SPP APR, that annual report. We submit that to the U.S. Department of Education every year by February 1st. That's the deadline for that submission. If you go to the next slide, today, we're going to talk about two of the specific indicators that are included in the SPP APR, and those are indicators 4A and 4B. So first, I'll share with you about indicator 4A. The definition for that indicator is the percent of local education agencies, or that's referring to typically our local school districts, with significant discrepancy in the rate of suspensions and expulsions of greater than 10 days in a school year for students with individual education programs. And so if you notice in that definition, it talks about significant discrepancy. And so on the next slide, I've shared with you how in Kentucky we define significant discrepancy. We can go to the next slide. I think you'll see it. There we go. This is the current definition in Kentucky for significant discrepancy. This is important to note because this is where in a few slides I'm going to share with you some proposed changes. But currently, for significant discrepancy under indicator 4A, it's LEAs that have a rate of out-of-school removals of students with IEPs that is at least 3 times higher than the state rate for the same type of removals. And that local education agency has to have at least 50 students with IEPs within their LEA. So you'll see on the right-hand column, I've kind of laid those pieces out for you. The threshold is 3.0. So we look at 3 times higher than the state rate. That's the threshold for significant discrepancy. The N size is 50. So we have to have 50 students in the LEA with IEPs. And then the cell size is 1. So meaning we have to have at least 1 student that meets this criteria of being suspended or expelled greater than 10 days in the school year. Next slide. Indicator 4B is similar. We're still talking about significant discrepancy, but with 4B, we break that down by race or ethnicity. And so you'll see here the definition for indicator 4B. It's the percent of LEAs, local education agencies, with a significant discrepancy by race or ethnicity in the rate of suspensions or expulsions of greater than 10 days in a school year for students with IEPs. That's the first part. And policies, procedures, or practices that contribute to the significant discrepancy and do not comply with requirements related to development and implementation of individual education programs, the use of positive behavioral interventions and supports, and procedural safeguards. So with indicator 4B, we're looking first to see, is there a significant discrepancy by race or ethnicity? And if there is, then we review student records to determine if the LEA is following the appropriate practices when they are making those decisions about removals for students. Okay, next slide talks about significant discrepancy and how we define that in Kentucky for indicator 4B. For this one, it's the same threshold. The local education agency's rate of out-of-school removals of students with individual education programs is at least 3 times higher than the state rate for the same type of removals. But for 4B, the N size is different than 4A. The LEA has to have at least 10 students with disabilities in any race or ethnicity category. And so on the right-hand side, I've shown you again, the threshold is 3.0. The N size for this one is 10. The cell size is the same as 1. So there has to be at least 1 student that has been removed out of school greater than 10 days. All right. Next slide, I wanted to share with you some information that we received from the Office of Special Education Programs. So when we submitted our SPP APR last year, February of 2023, the Office of Special Education Programs reviews that submission and they provide feedback or comments to us as they determine necessary. And you'll see here one of the comments that they provided to us is that they made note that the state's chosen methodology results in a threshold for measuring significant discrepancy in the rate of long-term suspension and expulsion rates of children with IEPs that falls above the median of thresholds used by all states that use a rate ratio. So to break that down a little bit, what they were saying is that our threshold of 3.0 is higher than the median of the thresholds used by other states. Now, they didn't tell us if there was a specific threshold they wanted us to use. They didn't tell us what other states were using as their threshold. We did gather some information from it was just an informal survey of other states while several data managers were together at a conference from multiple states. They just asked the question, hey, will everybody share with us what your actual threshold is? Ours is 3.0. The majority of states, or the average that came out of that informal survey, is that their threshold was 2.5. So you could see ours was higher than that. That's not scientific data. It's just an informal survey, but it did give us some information about where other states have their threshold. So next slide gets us then to our proposed changes to our definition for significant discrepancy, both for indicators 4A and 4B. The first thing that we're planning to change is the cell size. Remember, on both of those indicators, I said that the cell size was 1, meaning that the district had to have at least one student that was removed greater than 10 school days within the school year. We are planning to change that to 2, that the district would have to have at least 2 students removed greater than 10 school days in the school year. We have had it at 2 before. We've, with the cell size at 1, we've run into some barriers there. It's been very difficult to impossible to identify any type of systemic needs within the district when it's only 1 student. Sometimes there could be some confidentiality concerns if it's a very small district and there's only 1 student that's being addressed in that report. We don't want to cause any barriers there regarding confidentiality. So we've determined that we need to change that cell size to 2. The next change is where I need your feedback, and that's regarding the threshold. The threshold is what we multiply by the state rate to determine if there's a significant discrepancy. Currently, our threshold is 3.0. The information that we received from Office of Special Education Programs said that our threshold is higher than the median of all other states. And so we kind of have 2 options here that we were thinking about, either changing that to 2.25 or 2.5. And so I wanted to give you some rationale for both of those options and then get some feedback from you about which one we should choose. 2.5 was the number that we received from that informal survey of other states, where we think that would put us much closer to the average of other states and what their threshold is that they utilize. So that's why 2.5. We also considered 2.25, which would be a little bit more aggressive at addressing Office of Special Education Programs comment. It's a lower threshold. But the reason for considering 2.25 is that is the same threshold that we use in calculations for indicators 9 and 10. And so we thought that some consistency between indicators 4, 9, and 10 might be helpful in understanding to our school districts, to the public, when they're looking at how we make these calculations. That consistency of the 2.25 threshold could be very beneficial. So that's a couple of reasons why we are considering 2.25 or 2.5. And Jared, if you'll go to that last slide, it's still the proposed changes. I've just kind of put on the left the current significant discrepancy, and then on the right what we're proposing to change. And I've highlighted the changes there in yellow. You'll see that we're not proposing a change to the N size, that we are planning to change that cell size to 2, And then the top one that's highlighted is where the threshold, we'd like your feedback on whether you think 2.25 or 2.5 is most appropriate. So I'm happy to take any questions you may have and try to answer those, and then also to hear your feedback.
Thank you, Carolyn. Again, at this time, we can open up for any questions. I do have one.
Sure.
With the informal survey where you received the threshold feedback, did you receive any feedback regarding the cell size?
We did not ask for information about cell size.
Okay.
We do have Amy Patterson is here. She's our Part B data manager. And so she is also available. Amy, if you have any additional information to provide or anything that you're aware of regarding cell size, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yes.
The cell size wasn't really discussed at all. I think most districts have, most states have it around 2. And I have also informally discussed the cell size of 1 versus 2 with other states. And most states say with 1, it causes a lot more difficulties than is worth it being 1. So we make it 2 to make it so you can identify systemic noncompliance and you don't have to deal with the privacy issues.
Thank you, Amy.
And the other thing is OSEP doesn't really mention cell size. They're only concerned with the threshold. I'm sorry.
Gotcha. We got a question from the floor. Zach, you're recognized at this time.
I have a question. This is Zach Stumbo. My question would be, did you all disaggregate it in any way to see any of the subgroups in the overall population, or is this anything that you would do maybe into the future? I don't have an opinion on the 2.25 versus the 2.5. I do worry districts with just the cell size of 1. Would there be any spot checking of those districts who aren't viewed?
So for those districts that would have just the cell size of 1, we wouldn't be reviewing them under indicator 4. That wouldn't be something that we would review their data specific to this indicator. They could be reviewed other ways if there were an issue. For example, we could receive some type of dispute resolution process there. If there was a formal complaint, we would look at the data, around that if that came into it. So there are other ways that information could come to us if there was a concern and we could review it, but we wouldn't be reviewing for one specific student. We would be looking at 2 or more within that district that fell into that category.
May I ask a follow-up to that?
Sure.
How many districts have only 1 versus how many are 2 or more?
Amy may be able to look at our data. She has it pulled up from last year's data. We don't have this year's new data yet that we'll be working from, but she does have last year's data set that we can take a look at that and see how many districts that might be.
Give me about 2 minutes and I'll figure that out.
And I'll share one more thing while she's looking for that. I will share with you one of the things that's problematic around the cell size of 1 is that we are required to look at lag data for this indicator. So what we looked at last spring, we did desk reviews for data from the 2021-2022 school year. And that's what we will be submitting. That's what we're required to submit in our February 1 of 2024 that coming up. in that SPP APR. And so one thing that we find when we're looking at one student only is there are often times when that student is no longer in the school district. And so we're reviewing a file of a student that's no longer there, and there's some problems there in trying to correct that within the district because it was only one student. If we look at more than one student, we have an opportunity to identify systemic noncompliance if it is there. And so even if the student has moved on to another location, the district can still address that systemic noncompliance if found under indicator 4.
There are 19 districts that only had one student who was suspended greater than 10 days out of school, which is the definition of indicator 4.
Thank you. I guess I was just worried that maybe it was something like more than half of them.
Oh.
Zach, I think you and I were on the same page regarding that cell size. I was thinking that number was higher, but that's good to know. Are there any additional questions for Carol Ann or Miss Amy Patterson at this time regarding the proposed changes? So Carol Ann, is it that we make a recommendation, or you kind of just, because I think we make the recommendation
Yes, I'd love to
to
hear
support
from
it?
I'd love to hear from SAPEC regarding the threshold, if you would recommend the 2.25 or the 2.5 number for our threshold under indicator 4.
So SAPEC, I need your commentary because we have a proposed change regarding moving from a 3.0 threshold to a potential 2.5 or 2.25.
I'm not sure who mentioned it, but consistency, I think, is important for districts. Thinking about that 2.25. I won't pretend to understand the impacts of 2.25 to 2.5 in regards to numbers, but I think consistency makes it a little bit easier for districts and staff to understand too in regards to those thresholds.
Sure. I think Amy has her hand up, so she may be getting ready to share what I was going to say. She has that data pulled up. It's like I said, it's last year's data that we will have to look at, but she could tell you very quickly. She can plug in the two different numbers for threshold and tell you what difference that would make as far as how many districts were identified with significant discrepancy.
So we look at indicator 4 by race. And so at 2.5, there are 18 districts and 39 areas, meaning races, like, one district may be identified for 2 different races or 3 different races. So it's 18 districts and 39 races at 2.5. At 2.25, it's 19 districts and 42 areas. So it's a difference of 1 district and an addition of 3 areas. So it's not a huge difference, but it allows us to dig in a little deeper to take a look at what's going on.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Tiffany, for that question. And going back to, what was it at the 3.5? We didn't talk about what that number was, did we?
At 3.0, it was
At
18
3.0.
districts and 18 districts and 36 areas.
36.
And at 2.9, it was 18 districts and 39 areas. So there's not that much of a difference, there either.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And with this report, Carolyn, it is tracked annually.
Yes.
Any other additional commentary?
I've got just a quick question, Carol Ann, sorry.
Sure.
Does the KDE have a position, like a number they would like to see, like 2.25 or 2.5? If I can ask.
Great question. Yes, we see positives for either of those numbers. We see where 2.5 would help to align us more on average with other states, which is being responsive to the feedback we received from OSEP. 2.25, we see positives with the consistency with our other indicators. It also even more aggressively addresses what OSEP had responded to us. And so we really see positives with both. And that's why we wanted to gather your feedback to see which direction you thought was better. We really wanted that stakeholder input before we make our final decision of which number we go with. But that's a great question. I think we're okay with either number, but we want that stakeholder feedback to help support what that decision is that we will make in the end.
So it sounds to me like 2.25 would probably be the better number, if I'm not mistaken.
From KDE's perspective, we just want to hear your recommendation. So we don't necessarily have one picked out that we think is better.
Oh, okay.
But I'd love to hear from you if you think one is better than the other. Does that make sense?
Based on what you said, I feel like 2.25 might be the better recommendation myself, but
Okay.
I know that's just one one opinion on the panel.
Thank you. I appreciate your feedback.
Thanks, David. I do too. I got another question. How often do you change that threshold?
So we set our plan at least every 6 years, and we consider what we're doing, any changes we would make. But we also can revisit this at any time to look at that threshold. So the reason we're coming to you now is we are getting ready to start in the next few months. We will be starting our indicator for monitoring desk reviews that for the data that will be submitted in next year's SPPAPR. So we need to know what those changes are going to be before we start that process. Once we go through that process, if we see that additional changes are needed, or if SAPEC wants us to revisit that, we could always look at it again next year before we started the process again. So we could make changes, again, if we needed to for some reason.
Okay. Are there any other additional commentary regarding the proposed changes to kind of assist Carolyn and her team regarding these changes as February 1st is around the corner? Any other additional questions? So I think the consistency that I hear from the advisory panel is 2.25 for consistency across the board as it relates to indicator 9 and 10. And then we support the cell size change to cell 2, from cell 1 to cell 2. Because it didn't seem like it was, we throwing around that term significant. It wasn't a significant change with the 18 districts and then just with the 19 districts regarding the cell size.
Got it. Thank you, Dr. East.
We hope that helps. Well,
Thanks.
good
Thank you.
luck with the annual report right around the corner. I'm sure you and your team will be nose deep into numbers.
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
So panel, we are just perusing through the agenda ahead of schedule. Next we had coming up was lunch, but we are ahead of schedule. If you guys would like to proceed with the next item that I had on the agenda was think, pair, share. I kind of wanted to get some feedback from the committee as far as any topics that we wanted to learn about as the advisory council. What's the role in the professional development? If we needed to go back over the bylaws and use this time where we could talk amongst each other to give our ask to KDE and then allow KDE to give us some feedback as far as what they would like to see from us. That was my think, pair, share time for that teacher terminology being in the classroom. So with that, I'll open the floor for any topics that you guys want to hear about, want to learn more about, think we should bring in as a guest panelist. Just kind of give me your feedback. Michelle, I see your hand. You can be recognized to speak at this time.
Hi, thank you. This is Michelle Morgan. I know this is an issue that I have brought up before, and then I've actually talked to Veronica Sullivan at KDE about it, but it's the use of discrepancy model for eligibility and IDEA for SLD students. There's a problem, an ongoing problem throughout the state where the discrepancy model charts that are posted on KDE's website are being used to deny services for SLD students, despite the fact that there is other data that should be considered in the triangulation. It's an ongoing issue throughout the state.
So I have the SLD model that's posted on the website, which is used as a discrepancy model.
So,
and it is deterring or not providing services. Say that again for me.
So here's what happens when a child is considered for SLD services. The state says that they can qualify under the RTI model, which we're now calling MTSS, or severe discrepancy. sometimes districts are allowed to then make policies that, oh, well, we only qualify kids using the discrepancy model. And I know they're allowed to do that. But what happens is when the districts decide to use those charts, they are still supposed to triangulate the data. And so kids are going into meetings with lots of testing saying that they have a significant difference when compared to their peers using other testing. But the tables that are on KDE consider so little data, right? They do not consider the whole child. But what's happening is if that table says that there is not a significant discrepancy, schools will not qualify that child. And what they're saying, what they're telling parents is, KDE tells us that if there's not a significant discrepancy on those tables, that child cannot be considered for services. And that is not accurate per my conversation with KDE, but it is still happening.
And we need to bring in Veronica.
She is aware of the situation. It would be great to talk to her about it again.
Okay. 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 Thank you for that. I'll make a note to reach out to her for our next meeting. And I do recall you bringing this up, this discrepancy model several times.
We had a public comment on it one time.
Yeah. That was probably the last public comment, huh?
Probably.
Thank you, Michelle. Any other additional topics, things that you're hearing, things that you may be witnessing, so that we can kind of reach out as far as topics? Okay. Are there any other professional development opportunities that you would like to see, that we need to bring forth, that we could be participatory in? As a panel. Lashina, I see your hand raised. You're recognized at this time.
Okay, thank you. One thing that I think would be beneficial, it could be, is any professional development that centers around understanding the different um, the different categories of special needs across our state. Any PD that will allow us to kind of saturate ourselves for a period of time in the language and conversations, um, so that when we have our meetings and folks are coming, and of course KDE asking for our feedback, that we have a little more base knowledge across the board.
So any type of PD on special education determinations and categories that kind of sum it up, just so we can get a broader based knowledge of what that looks like. Thank you. Try to reach out and find somebody. We talked in leadership last week or week before last during our planning meetings to just try to think outside the box. And we know that we have some vacancies on the panel, but like team builder, we know we're restricted to some capacities where we have to be in compliance with the Open Meeting Act. with our interpreters, ADA, all things to keep us in compliance. But if there's anything that you guys think that we're missing, that we need to put at the forefront besides our indicators, besides our legislative bills, please don't hesitate to send me an email. We know we want to increase visibility and just try to continue to be champions for individuals and or students with disabilities across the Commonwealth. And we have one goal, one voice as the state advisory panel for exceptional children. And if I don't say it enough, I need you guys. I appreciate the expertise that in your respective roles you bring to this table. So it's very important that we hear your voice because it does matter. So we can do two things, guys. It's about 5 minutes to 11. We have designated 10 minutes for each committee group to meet. We can do that now and we'll adjourn early. That's the only other thing that we have on, or we can take about a 5-minute break and we can reconvene and then have our committee minutes, and then we can still adjourn early. What's the pleasure? Give me some feedback and discussion right now.
You need a motion for that. I'll make the motion that we take the 5-minute break and then start with committee meetings.
Okay.
And move it up.
Did I hear a second?
Yes, Michelle Morgan, I second the 5-minute break and then reconvene.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Any abstentions? It's been moved and properly second that we adjourn for a few minutes. Let's reconvene at 11:03. And then we'll start with the transition. We can do 11:05. 11:05. And up first will be the transition committee, which will be Kathy Shepherd-Jones, Melissa Farrell, formerly myself, Tal Curry, and Cora McNabb. So I think Tal is the only one present. And then following parent involvement, Lashina Carruthers, Tracy Brule, Tammy Giles, Emily Fox, Michelle Morgan. And just to reiterate how we'll go virtually, there's some meeting norms that will take place in the virtual capacity and what that looks like since we are meeting virtually. Just wanted to reiterate what those are. And it is. So remember to have your cameras on throughout the duration of the meeting, just so we can adhere to the Open Meetings Act. And we will allot about 10 minutes for each committee. If you are not, David, is it okay if they're not in that committee that they can cut their cameras off?
Yes, this is David Wickersham. Yes, Dr. East, if they're not participating, if that committee is not meeting because it doesn't have sufficient membership for it to convene, members can have their cameras off at that time and then turn them back on when the whole group reconvenes.
Sounds great.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, up first at 10:05 will be the transition committee. We'll go on a 6-minute intercession right now, and I'll see you guys at 11:05. Thank you so much. Okay, everyone, we are back. And Tal just shared his resources for the transition committee. Jared, did you read that? Tal, do you want us to pull that up for you on the screen?
Sure, that would be great.
Okay. Did you receive that, Jared? You want me to forward it to you or you want me to share it? Okay,
Either
I'll
way you
forward
want to
it.
do, Tanika, is fine with me.
Okay.
So for the transition subcommittee, while we're waiting for that to come up, as indicated in our October meeting minutes, still waiting on the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation to finish their updates to a document that they're looking to be able to share with school districts and other partners that will give hopefully a little bit better information about OVR services, not just for age 14 through 21, but really kind of that transition age and looking at employment services after high school. We have not met as a committee since our last meeting. Obviously, that one of the struggles is, I think everybody mentioned on there besides Dr. East is um, I haven't had any contact with. Not sure. Cora's not on today, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, I've had some conversations with Cora separately through the um, Employment First Council, and what I shared in the document is a very rough draft based on West Virginia. They had some titles for transition. We borrowed some of those titles and then added resources. We're trying to narrow it down to 2 to 3 resources under each one of the um, titles, if you will. But it starts completely with looking at really that purpose, which is increasing the knowledge and parental involvement for all community partners to make informed decisions about transition services for students with disabilities. And so this is a one pager front and back is what we're thinking that could be shared during IEP meetings, starting at age 13, 14 through 18 or 21. The starting resource really is, they're called employment checklists, but the transition checklists at UKHDI, they come up as employment checklists when you click on that hyperlink. But there's youth age 16 to 18, ages 11 to 15, and then there's also checklists for families 11 to 15 and 16 to 18. There's also an example vision statement and template. There's also ages younger than that, but since this is kind of focusing on that 14 to 21-year-old, we just left those on there. The resources are getting vetted by several different groups, but gives you kind of an idea of some of the resources to be included. I certainly would want to get KDE's input as well as you all as a council. So that's why I sent this to you. If you have any suggestions for other resources, those are hyperlinks under each one of these for self-advocacy, assistive technology, behavioral health, benefits, blind or visually impaired, crisis, deaf or hard of hearing, deafblind, and I've got a couple particular folks looking at that, education, employment, financial aid, really post-secondary, health and wellness, housing, independent living, medical, money management, nutrition, parent caregiver resources, transportation, transition planning in general. These are really just notes below this. This was kind of other information that I don't think is going to make it, but some folks have brought up as far as exploring the larger disability community, and then some other resources that had been utilized in the past by transition folks, just for folks' consideration. It is really, the whole list is really geared towards disability. It doesn't focus just on autism or just on a particular disability population, although there are some resources, obviously most resources overlap those groups. So that's what I wanted to share. The hope is that by the next meeting, we would have something that could be shared really more informally through um, through state systems. But again, if it can be endorsed by KDE, if it can be endorsed by Kentucky Spin, other folks could put it on their websites. And really, it's a tool for not just families, but for those community partners, including special educators. And with such a large transition in our special education and school staff, I think it's just good to have resources out there that people know that they can become involved with. So this isn't geared just to OVR. It's kind of all disability resources. OVR, one of the goals is to have their OVR sheet on here once it's out, that has contact information and a little bit more information about what they do. Does anybody have any questions?
Are there any questions for the transition committee? Cal, it looks great. I know you've been building for a long time. Well, we've been building with that particular document. I guess our question to our communication team, because even at CEC this year, if we could have put our meeting dates on the flyer that David created, we could have then had one and not had both. So is there a way that we can make this pretty and then upload it?
That would be the goal. One, I
Yeah.
don't make things pretty, so I'm glad you brought that up. This is just a functional way to kind of put the information together, hoping that someone, especially once we get it narrowed down some to maybe 2 or 3 bullets under each one of those resources, that that it could be made pretty. It could also be more interactive. So if you had it on a website, you could click on advocacy self-determination, and it could have the top 2, or it could have 5 or 6 resources under there. So that's another avenue. But I think you're right. If there's interest in adding something or putting it in a place where it can also advertise things, if we want to put something on there about SAPEC, that's certainly a possibility as well.
Mm-hmm. Any thoughts from the panel? Well, I think it's great. It really is coming along, and especially for those that are operating in a parental capacity, but we all serve in different roles and multiple roles, but being able to find it one place is important, and we don't want to be on the fox chase when we're looking for information. But you and the committee have done a great job for trying to put that together. So thank you.
No problem. And as always, if there's folks that were not a part of the meeting, or like many of us need to take a look at something in more detail, if you all want to send me any edits, feel free to do that. That would be great. Edits
Okay.
or additions. That's it for the transition subcommittee.
Thank you so much, Tal.
I also want to say great job. It's a great resource list. There's a lot of information I'm sure that we can obtain from going to each of those links. So great job. The only thing I would add, Misty, would it be possible to maybe get with the communications team to see if we could actually add this to the KDE website as some resources on the SAPEC page?
Yes, everything, of course, would have to go through our KDE editing and be approved before we can do that. But we can check into that for you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
I think so.
And as soon as it gets kind of finalized with a couple of the other Employment First, a couple other groups that I've been working with, separate of SAPEC, I can then share it with you all again, and then hopefully can go through that process to be on the resource page.
Okay, great. Next up, we have the parent involvement subcommittee. Lashina did text me that she had to jump off for something, but we have Lashina, Tracy, Tammy, Emily, and Michelle.
I wasn't here last meeting. Michelle, you might have more insight into what you guys have been working on lately. I think Tammy and Tracy are both out as well today.
I had to miss the last one also, and I, for some reason, have trouble getting access to the documents to the Gmail account that I can access, so I can't bring it up. But I know in general, we have been talking about ways to let parents know that there is something that they can use to, I don't know if it's called a rating scale or a form or something that they can use to give feedback regarding their experience with the special education process. Because a lot of parents don't even know that exists. And so we've been trying to problem solve that. We've talked about, like, there's the concern with giving it at meetings is that parents feel pressure to fill it out while the people that they're evaluating are sitting in front of them. But when it's being offered, districts offer it different ways. The way it's being offered currently isn't getting much feedback. But I don't know what was discussed at the last meeting either.
Since we both missed that last meeting, I will kind of just brief the team on the council on my experience most recently with this survey. It came through in a mass email from the district, which I totally understand, went to all the special education parents. It was, and I love my district, but I do think KDE could, or SAPEC could offer some guidance on how to make this a little bit more user-friendly or draw attention. It's a very generic email that literally just says, please take a few moments to fill out this survey. This will provide KDE with valuable data to improve parent and family engagement. It's an attached PDF that's written out with a QR code on that I'm sure we provided. But when you send a PDF with a QR code, now I've got to get my phone out. I got to take a picture of that QR code. Like, the link doesn't even, the link is not attached to work. And maybe that's just a conversation I need to have with my own district. But I do feel like if I'm probably not the only one getting these emails and these surveys, and they're just blowing through them, right? They're just ignoring them. So I think if we could make a recommendation as parent involvement at all, it'd be to work with the organizations that are sending these surveys out and the districts that are sending these out to say, hey, there's a better way to do this to get our attention. Michelle, I know we talked about at the meeting, but maybe it goes out with the meeting invite rather than at the meeting, or explaining to them, here, take this and move on and provide it later. But or maybe school districts could even provide the results of their survey. But I don't know, I'm still just frustrated on the way that survey comes out. It's lackluster at best as far as my district. I know that some parents that were here on the council didn't even know that survey came out, so it's out now apparently.
So is there a deadline for that survey?
When I open it up, my letter from the district, I've got it pulled up here in front of me, says the deadline is June 30th.
I'm gonna defer to Tiffany on a quick question regarding her district. Like, is there a time period where it does go out? Like, how do you do it in your district? Do you know? Is it done?
So, yeah, well,
differently in each
and this
district?
is one of those things too that I'll agree with Emily. So I actually have a student who, my youngest receives speech services. So I'm trying to recall, I'm like, oh my gosh, did I get it? Did I fill it out? And I feel like I did. I will tell you that, again, I was also director of special education several years back, and I remember this a little bit. Years ago, again, we would send out a hard copy letter with a QR code, but it was very similar in a sense of, like, it still takes an extra step for a parent And I don't know that that was the best way either. Again, I don't know if it's multiple ways. I can definitely find out rather quickly what we've done as a district. Most want to say, and again, I say don't quote me in this because I could be wrong, but I feel like I might have gotten it in a text message with a link. Now, I will say the same thing though. I don't, because we do like a one call system that I find that that's been most engaging with my families here is sending it through that text message link, and then they can click into the image or whatever from there. With that being said, though, I don't know that it was a direct link to the form to complete, if that makes sense. So again, if I have to click into something and then follow a QR code, then it's probably I'm like, okay, I'll have to do this later, and then I don't go back to it is likely what happens. I feel like we as a district, we send it out typically the same time of the year. I'm a little hesitant on that too, if that's accurate. I know in the past we've had like Chromebooks and stations set up for ARC meetings during those time frames for families to be able to fill that out kind of like as they exit. I'm not going to say the engagement was high either. I don't know. I don't remember all of those things, but I do know we've tried a couple of different routes with that over the last, let's say 7 years, because that's kind of all that I'm familiar with. I don't know if that helps or hurts or what, but I would have to go back. Emily, is it, even when you go to the QR code, does it take you directly to the link of the form for KDE?
So I have this meeting on my phone so that I'm using my computer right now. So I haven't picked it, but that your scenario is exactly what happened. I opened the email. It's an attached PDF letter that has a QR code on it. I'm like, oh gosh, okay, I've got to get my phone and scan this QR code because this hyperlink isn't working. Like, I'll just do that later. And then I didn't remember it until today's meeting where I was like, oh my gosh, I need to go back and find that survey. And so my next step is I love our special education director of special programs at our school district. So my next email to him this afternoon is going to be like, hey, dude, is there a reason this isn't just a direct link to this survey? I think we might get better engagement on that. But, I think the QR code takes you to the it's the University of Kentucky that provides the survey. So I think the QR code takes you there, and then you have to go down to parent survey, but I could be wrong. I will double check that and let you know.
So I think that's the other thing is that QR code, if I remember correctly, I think KDE kind of helped us with that. Like there's some formats that they send to us. Again, this was years ago, that had like those structures already embedded. So that might be something to think through too. Like, where is this disconnect? Is it that the QR code also takes extra steps? Or is that the districts that have not purposefully, right, but created extra steps? I think that's something to probably look at too. But definitely a text message link to the form is you're gonna get the most probably at that point, or even just an email and a link to the form. I think some of it is we're trying to explain to parents what it is, because I can remember doing that. Like I had a lengthy letter that tried to explain, but I'm not sure that engages any more than just giving the link and maybe being like, what's this link? And clicking on like, oh, they're wanting my feedback on this, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. We could give some as a parent, and Michelle, I feel like I'm consuming the answers here, so you jump in. But I do feel like, man, we really for districts to have
and I
better.
think that when I get that form, it's not even a digitized form. Like it's just mailed to me. It's a paper form, and like so, if we are talking about sending out links that work, I mean, can we when you go to the PDF, do you then have to print it, or is it
That's
a
what I
digital
was gonna
form?
say. Is it digital? Like, can you answer it on your phone?
So, and again, this is my district. I feel horrible. I feel like I'm throwing them under the bus. I love them. It's in a PDF. It's an instruction sheet in a PDF, and like the link.
But you have to.
The link does work, and so now I got to get my phone and scan this QR code. So no, you don't have to print it out. I mean, you can fill out the form on your phone. Yeah. But I'm just saying, man, I'm going to guess that my school is doing exactly what all the other districts are. There's probably just a template and they're sending this out. man, we got to do better with our template if that, and it's coming from the Human Development Institute. And so maybe that's where we need to go, Michelle, is to say, hey, there's a better way to send this out. But it does say, if you would like a printed copy, you can get that and send it back in a sealed envelope, because everyone has time to do that. Okay.
So from the KDE side, if anybody can chime in and tell us, is HDI facilitating the survey for KDE? Because I think that's what I'm hearing. And
It's not the paragraph.
if so, who do we need to contact with our SAPEC recommendations? Because it sounds like we have some suggestions. And I too don't know if I completed the survey last year or the year before. Miss Veronica.
Hi, this is Veronica Sullivan. So we have a liaison at KDE who works with the Human Development Institute at the University of Kentucky. And so we can connect our liaison with this group to get your feedback, because I'm listening and I'm trying to take notes for her because she's not here, but she works closely with HDI, and there's been a lot of work over the years to try to improve the participation rate. So she would probably love to hear feedback from this group on ideas of how to increase participation. And her name is Shasta Hensley.
I would love to talk to Shasta.
Yeah, we can work on that.
Yes, that would be excellent if you could do that. That would be great.
Okay.
Because then we can know some deadlines. If the survey's out until June, when are they being sent?
The survey just opened up January 15th, and it will close June 30th.
Okay. Even if we have some late folks that fills it out in April after our next meeting, Emily and Michelle, it'll be great.
Yeah, and just because I feel like I've thrown my district under the bus, I want you to know that if it came out on January 15th, really sent it out the very next day. So I'm so proud of them.
Yeah, no, I think it's feedback. I'm not taking it as throwing your district under the bus. I mean, I'm not from your district, but personally, I think feedback is important, especially from the end user. So I appreciate it.
And if it makes you feel any better, Emily, I don't know your district. It ain't coming to my head right now.
That's lovely. We'll just leave it like that.
So I did also just kind of text my director. I'm like, hey, so she said the same. She was like, I mean, we haven't sent it. We're getting ready to. She was like, we're working on it. I was like, no, it's fine. I just wanted to see like what. So her response is, we will do a one call. So like we'll notify families of that by voice, like here is where you can find it, those kinds of things. But it'll also be a text message and an email. Now, with that being said, she was also just getting ready to share it with me. If my computer comes up, I don't want to hold everybody up, and my internet's not it's not going very fast right now. So I will I'll put in the chat box or something like, okay, hey, this is what it looked like, or kind of link to it, because she was going to send me what they're working on to be able to send out. I think she said next week actually. So
because from my understanding from you guys, it's a universal survey, right? Okay.
Yes. I think Emily's description of what they send out as lackluster was amazing, because it doesn't, if as a parent, my child has been in special education for 4 years now, but before I joined, like now when I get it, I'm like, oh, this is what we've been talking about. But before then, I didn't pay any attention to it if I got it. Like, I don't even recall getting it. It may be that I did get it, but I didn't pay attention to it because I wasn't aware of the impact that it could have
Yeah.
And I again, like I'm not notified as results. Like I'm not getting anything that says, hey, these are things that have changed in the past due to results of these responses. And so, because sometimes as a parent of a child with an IEP, you think, gosh, I keep saying the same things and nothing ever changes. Do I want to take my time and energy to address this again when nothing is going to change? Because it is very frustrating at times to be the parent of a child with an IEP where you keep saying things and you feel like no one is listening and nothing is changing and you're fighting your own battle and it's exhausting.
I think you make a great point that could definitely, especially for the parent involvement subcommittee, I think it could be a great goal. If we look at the percentage rate, why I'm not Carol Ann Morrison on that side of things with the data analytics, but I believe if you can't measure it, it doesn't matter. But if we can set some type of goal to increase this survey with our efforts going into next year, I think that will be a great target with just putting all of our heads together in this short subcommittee meeting on what we could do to increase engagement. I'm sure somebody has some data on, and I remember them bringing it to us last year on what the participation rate or engagement rate was. It's
I believe
definitely
it's
worth
very
us
low.
looking into. You think it's what? Very
I
low?
believe it's low.
I agree. I agree. But I think we have some connection points with HDI that we'll get from Veronica. And if she sends that to me, guys, I'll pass that off with a warm handoff to you guys on the parent involvement committee, and let us know how we can support you guys with that initiative. But I like it a lot, a lot. And Tiffany, if you could share that as well. And just at the top of my head, if anybody is not receiving emails from me, please let me know. Sometimes your emails change, and I think I've minimized the bounce backs. But if you're not receiving emails from me, let me know. I'm gonna tell this story that Misty was responding to my old email address and went into panic mode because it was the wrong email address. So it even happens to me. But if you're not getting emails from either Misty or myself, please let me know. Thank you guys on the parent involvement committee. Are there any other questions for this group? So next we have supervision and legislative. I do not think we have anyone from this committee on board on the call today. I have Tyler Reed, Danny Slayton, Krista Bell, and Maria Kepling, Cassie Joe. I know Maria is not here anymore. Okay. Next, we'll go to the FAPE committee, which is the Free Appropriate Public Education Committee. I have Jeffrey Coles, Esther Hazlett, Ashley Barlow, Tiffany Clark, and Krista Payne. Do you guys have any report outs from either Jeff or Tiffany? I think you guys are the only two on here today.
I am currently searching to see what I can find because I do not remember. I don't even know if I was present, but I'm looking.
Let me see. I think Jeff may be gone as well. So it may just be you, Tiffany, because I think Jeff is gone as well. Looking at my last I do not have you from my meeting notes, Tiffany, as for the last meeting. But if you guys think of something else that we can assist with, you can bring that back to the table. We do not have any respective members from the communication committee. We merged stakeholder engagement to communication, but still right now it's listed differently with Jenny Ward, Amy Crump, Kent Kelsch, Mary Lavin, and April Miller. I don't have any of them present today for the communication side.
Dr. East, for communication and stakeholder engagement, it's pretty much been Jenny and I the last 2 or 3 meetings, and we've kind of combined efforts. So, so if it's okay for me to speak on both.
Sure.
So we did, just so everyone knows, we do have a Facebook page up and running. It is entitled the Kentucky State Advisory Panel for Exceptional Children. I would like for everyone on the panel, if you would, to go on Facebook and like our page and share it so we can better get the word out. We can, we can advertise for our meetings and, and of course, in an attempt to solicit public comment. So just want everyone, if you would, please look that up on Facebook today and like it and share it.
And David, I want to say thank you for those that did not attend CEC this year for creating that flyer to give out. We got a lot of traction. David, myself, Lashina, and Tracy, we manned the tables. And still, to our knowledge, they weren't aware of what we did when we talked with educators, superintendents, parents, whoever came by the table. And they did take our information. So hopefully they go back through those documents. But thank you for putting that particular flyer together. We hope it'll generate some traffic, public comment, and create some awareness. I have Zach, you have your hand up. You're recognized at this time.
Hi, I was still hoping to circle back to maybe highlighting the group in the homeless newsletter. I'm sorry we didn't get around to that this fall, but my next newsletter would be in March. If someone would like to help me work on something, it's generally 350 to 500 words for an article, and I'd have to have that finished by the end of February. I just want to make sure that I know I've been doing this for almost a year now, but or if somebody even sent me an outline of what they'd want the article to include, I'm happy to write that. I could get it out to that audience. I'd be happy to publicize the group in that way.
Okay. That too, I'm looking at this list of committee members, and I do not have you on a subcommittee.
Oh, I thought originally I did the transition one because I already am on a transition committee, but maybe I wasn't listed.
Okay, could you replace Melissa?
I did. Melissa
Gotcha.
Farrell.
Yep, gotcha. Thank you for that update. I'm gonna need
No
to
problem.
update. I'll update this list. It looks like we haven't updated it this year.
Thank you.
Okay. And I'll work with you, Zach, to get you some information for the newsletter. Any other additional report outs, David, for stakeholder engagement and communication?
No.
Do we have anyone that's on our ad hoc committee? Oh, I did have one more question that I wrote down for the communication team. I think I've asked this before, but when I'm receiving my KDE newsletters and things, I do not see where our meetings are in the newsletters. Are those deadlines that we need to be submitting something to go in the KDE emails? I know it's posted on our websites, but I do see gifted and talented in the newsletter, other information. How do we create that visibility? Misty, I see your hand up. You're recognized at this time.
We do post SAPEC meeting dates in our OSEAL quarterly newsletter.
It's in the quarterly. Okay. Okay. So we are hitting those deadlines. I didn't know if it was something that we needed in additionally. Okay, team. All of our final remarks, all of our subcommittee meetings have met. So we have taken care of the business of the order. We do not have to submit any travel vouchers for today. So I know Edge is happy about that. Remember, an email will go out from Misty with your final remarks and exit slips. If you have any additional recommendations, we have some notes. Again, I want to thank our new leadership team, Vice Chair David Bradley and Emily Fox as the recording secretary. I look forward to working hand in hand with you guys on continuing the mission of SAPEC and the things that we can do and accomplish in 2024. Misty, you are recognized, dear.
Thank you, Dr. East. This is Misty. We can also put SAPEC meeting dates in our weekly news you can use as well.
Weekly news you can use. You guys should already have the next meeting on your calendar, but the next meeting is scheduled for May 18th at 9 p.m. I mean, sorry, not 9 p.m., 9 a.m. at the Sauer Building. Our next meeting is scheduled April 18th at the Sauer Building.